Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're diving into the absolute ultimate what-if scenario in Warhammer 40k lore. Imagine this. It begins with a sound that absolutely no living soul in the Imperial Palace ever expected to hear, and it's not an alarm. It's not the scream of a warp breach or the roar of invading armies. No, it is just silence. I mean, really think about it. For 10,000 years, the Golden Throne has never truly rested. It has just endlessly groaned, pumping unimaginable power through machinery that's literally older than the Imperium itself. The tech priests, they honestly believed this endless strain was just a fundamental law of physics at this point. And the Adeptus Custodes have built their entire existence around guarding the being trapped upon it. But then suddenly, every single warning rune across the Sanctum Imperialis goes dark. The machinery just stops, and the Emperor opens his eyes. Now, the immediate galactic reaction, it would be absolutely catastrophic. Across the galaxy, astropaths would just collapse in agony. We would see warp storms twisting into impossible, terrifying shapes, and entire fleets would lose contact within seconds. Millions, probably billions, would fall to their knees, completely believing humanity had just witnessed its greatest miracle. But for others, well, it would look exactly like the beginning of the final apocalypse. But here is a truly fascinating detail. No official Imperial archive has ever actually described what would happen if the master of mankind simply stood up from the Golden Throne. And honestly, that silence is probably intentional because the real answer might be far, far more terrifying than any chaos prophecy we have ever read. To understand why that is, we really have to look at the massive contradiction right at the heart of the Imperium. What's super interesting here is the stark contrast. Remember his original vision. He completely rejected religion and wanted true secular unity. But the reality of today's Imperium, they worship him as a literal god. The entire system survives through sacrifice, blind bureaucracy, and just relentless war. The Golden Throne isn't merely a life support machine anymore, you know. It is the anchor holding a crumbling civilization together. Literally every military campaign and political decision assumes one fundamental truth, and that truth is simply this: the Emperor will never rise. That single assumption is the foundational bedrock of the entire 41st millennium. Entire massive institutions depend completely on that one assumption. Think about it. The High Lords of Terra only govern because he cannot. The ecclesiarchy preaches because he does not speak. And the Inquisition, they decide what the truth is because there is absolutely no higher authority left to challenge them. Now, just imagine all of those foundational assumptions just vanishing in a single moment. Now, at first, a massive wave of celebration would wash over the galaxy, and it would spread faster than any military order ever could. Pilgrims would immediately declare that a new age of redemption had begun. Entire cathedrals would erupt in absolute frenzy. Out on the front lines, guard regiments would fight with such renewed determination that their morale alone could probably reverse battles everyone already thought were completely lost. But beneath all of that celebration, raw fear would start quietly spreading through the highest levels of the imperial government, because the Emperor waking up creates one massive, glaring question that absolutely nobody wants answered. What if he doesn't approve of what humanity has become? I mean, after all, look at the reality of the situation. This is not the Imperium he built. It is mutated into something larger, infinitely more fanatical and far, far crueler. It is a civilization where sheer ignorance is rewarded and innovation is literally feared as heresy. Would the Emperor look at the 41st millennium and see a hard-fought victory? Or would he see his ultimate failure? And of course, we absolutely cannot forget the forces of chaos. Let's trace how this builds over time because their reaction would be almost instantaneous. Right at 0 seconds, the Chaos Gods would react to this massive opposing psychic presence. See, they don't fear armies, but the Emperor is entirely different. Within just 1 hour, if his full psychic presence returned, the Materium could become violently unstable, warp roots collapsing, demonic invasions weakening. By day 1, Chaos Warlords would be panicking at the shifting balance of power and launching simultaneous offensives. The entire galaxy would descend into a chaotic free-for-all on a scale we haven't seen since the Horus Heresy. Meanwhile, imagine being the Adeptus Custodes right now. They would be facing the greatest crisis in their entire history. For 10,000 years, their sole job was to guard a motionless emperor. But now they have to protect a living, moving one, and that changes absolutely everything. Instead of defending a single room on Terra, every single journey he takes becomes a massive military campaign, and every public appearance is a potential assassination attempt. The logistical nightmares alone would be staggering. Even loyal commanders would completely struggle to adapt to taking direct orders instead of just following centuries-old doctrine. Segmentum commands would be completely rewritten overnight. Vital supply chains would be violently redirected. Entire worlds might just be abandoned because the Emperor deems them strategically useless, while others are suddenly heavily reinforced against threats no one else even understands. The Imperium would become incredibly fast but infinitely more chaotic. And then comes the greatest unknown of all, Roboute Guilliman. Since returning, Guilliman has carried this impossible burden of running an empire he barely recognizes, and he's constantly frustrated by its decay. If the Emperor returned, well, Guilliman might finally get the answers he's been so desperate for. Or he might discover that the Emperor's plans are even harsher than his own. Would father and son agree? Or would this reveal deep divisions that chaos could easily exploit? You see, the Imperium only survives because everyone assumes absolute unity at the top, but the reality might prove to be far, far messier. Now, out on the front lines, the military consequences would reshape absolutely everything. Remember, the Emperor isn't just another commander. He holds lost knowledge from the dark age of technology. We could actually see mythical weapon systems returning, ancient fortress worlds suddenly waking up, and lost colonies becoming vital strategic hubs. But this brilliantly illustrates a massive catch. The Emperor cannot be everywhere at once. Every single campaign he leads personally leaves another front completely vulnerable. And just think about the breakdown of this endless galactic war. If the Emperor focuses his attention on one front, chaos will just exploit the others. The Tyranids, they won't care. They'll just continue adapting like they always do. The Orks will actually grow stronger through the sheer scale of the new conflicts, and the Necrons are going to awaken regardless of what humanity does. Having the Emperor back definitely doesn't guarantee a single neat victory. And then there is the truly terrifying question regarding the warp itself. For 10,000 years, humanity has navigated the stars relying entirely upon the Astronomicon. If the Emperor physically leaves the Golden Throne, can that beacon still function? So the crucial point here is, if it can't function, we are looking at a cascading administrative crisis. First, Imperial fleets become totally isolated. Then astropathic communication fractures all across the galaxy. Entire sectors would just disappear into silence. Some worlds might wait decades to realize Terra even still exists, while others would just assume the Imperium has fallen and declare independence. Ironically, the Emperor's return could temporarily make humanity completely impossible to govern. The greatest miracle literally becomes its greatest nightmare. As the months pass, though, something entirely unexpected would begin happening. The emperor would start directly questioning imperial institutions. He'd ask, why are countless worlds starving? Why has science stagnated? And every single answer would point to one very uncomfortable reality. The Imperium's own bureaucracy has become its worst enemy. Reforming this wouldn't just take speeches, it would mean dismantling systems that trillions of people depend upon. Governors would resist, factions would stall. The emperor would likely discover that his greatest battlefield isn't the Eye of Terror, it is terror itself. Eventually, things would start to change in quieter ways. Forgotten tech would return, and campaigns would get far more efficient. But the internal resistance, that wouldn't stop. Civil wars would actually erupt, not because people reject the emperor, but because different fanatic factions would claim to understand his true will better than anyone else. It is a devastating irony. Humanity finally gets the leader it has prayed for, only to immediately tear itself apart arguing over what he actually means. But perhaps that was always going to be inevitable because, as we see in so much of 40K lore, faith often grows louder when certainty finally arrives. In the end, the Emperor standing up wouldn't just magically save the Imperium. It would act like a giant spotlight, exposing every single weakness hidden beneath 10 millennia of grim survival. Humanity would gain its greatest leader at the exact moment. Its empire had become completely incapable of following one. And perhaps that is exactly why no official record ever dares to answer this question. The Emperor's return might be humanity's ultimate victory, or it might reveal that the Imperium has drifted so far from his dream that he literally has to break it apart first to save it. If that day ever actually came, history would undoubtedly remember the moment the Golden Throne fell silent. But here's what I want to leave you with today. Would history remember it as the salvation of mankind, or simply as the first chapter of an even darker age? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Let us know what you think in the comments.